The first of the first item in the agenda is automate application discovery and dependency mapping, which is basically the first logical step that any user is likely to take with their infrastructure monitoring tool, and that is to run a discovery of various servers and virtual machines and applications within the IT ecosystem, discover them and add them within the console to monitor their performance. And dependency mapping is an extension or perhaps a huge value offering feature, in fact, which basically helps us save a lot of time that would be otherwise spent in identifying problems and making relevant changes. So it presents a holistic view, which we will see through the course of this webinar. We will then see how we shortlist or prioritize certain critical parameters when it comes to monitoring physical or virtual servers, how to implement a proper fault management strategy, or how to configure the best fault management practices with the help of applications manager would be the next part. And finally, we will see how the product enables users or admins to plan their capacity within their organizations, within the infrastructure, with the help of machine learning based forecasting and capacity planning reports. So let's look at the first topic in detail, that is automate application discovery and dependency mapping. So applications manager facilitates discovery by the following ways. The first of which is the conventional IP range based discovery, wherein you simply specify the IP address range and the product will ping all the different devices within that range and then discover the servers and applications and add them within the console. The VMware discovery is for VMware virtual machines, and then the product also supports the classless interdomain routing method of discovery. Once you, let us take for, in this case, the example of IP range based discovery. Once you have specified your IP range and you click on start discovery, this first screen that you see, this first image that you see on the screen, that is what we will be presented with when the discovery is ongoing. That is how many devices are being checked and how many have been discovered and basically what's going on. And depending upon the IP range or the number of servers or devices, this might last from a few seconds to a couple of minutes. And once this discovery process is complete, we will see something like this, which is basically just letting us know. If you can read the text right here, it says discover 2 servers and 4 applications. So the product was able to discover 2 host servers and 4 hosted applications, which is actually shown here. If you notice, this one is the host server and it has within it 3 different applications, and then there's one with 1 hosted application. And this basically gives us the flexibility to choose which of the discovered devices we want to add within the product and which aren't really critical to our business service and can be excluded from monitoring. So that's what the discovery feature is supposed to do. Let me quickly talk about the dependency mapping feature, and then we'll try to take a look at these features within the product. So let's begin with what exactly is dependency mapping. And in the most simplest definition, dependency mapping could just be categorized as a holistic view of all your IT applications, or rather a business view of all your applications. Now, this could be discovered applications, that is all applications within your IT ecosystem, or it could be applications that cater to a specific business service group. If you have, you can create certain business service groups within the product and add different set of servers and applications within that business service group and just visualize the dependency map for that. So there's levels of flexibility with respect to different features. The second point would be basically the core of what this feature does. That is, it allows us to understand the relationship between different applications or different servers, how they are communicating, how does the downtime of one particular instance impact other instances, and basically getting an overall picture, a quick picture about what problems there are and where they are and what is the status of devices. As you can see, the uh, the, the third, fourth, and fifth point, in fact, inform us that it basically allows us to ease our troubleshooting process by helping us identify problematic sources and reasons for problems quite faster. Let us take a quick look at how a dependency map would typically look like. And yeah, this one's a good example, in fact. So here we see that there are two Windows Server hosts, and there are a couple of databases and Tomcat servers, and all of them are basically linked. So we see here that the connection here is that these three applications are hosted here, while you see there's one that's hosted here and there's one that hosted here. And we see that these two Tomcat instances are in fact connected and they communicate with each other. And if you notice, you will find two types of icons, green and red. And of course, those are indicative of the health of these instances. The ones in red have some problems, and the ones in green are all functioning fine. And in fact, a small insight that we can derive from things like this is right here. This Tomcat server has some problem which is exclusive to the Tomcat server, and this is not impacting the health of either this Tomcat or this Windows server. So this is just an image, but then if we look at a similar dependency map within the product and place our cursor over these icons, we will see why, in fact, we will see the reasons as to why this Tomcat icon is displayed in red. What are the problems? So having said that, what I'm going to do now is jump to the product so we can quickly look at these features, the dependency mapping features and the discovery feature. So right here, I'm within the Applications Manager console. And right here is the monitor tab. I'm within the monitor tab just to quickly show you the breadth of technologies that are supported within the product, categorized under various different application types. Anyway, so what I'm going to do now is click on this button right here, the admin tab. And when I click that, right under the first title, the third point is add discover. I'm going to click on this one, and you see these three options. We will quickly look at what these two do, but first let's take a look at the discovery functionality. So right here is a discovery that has already been created and run. You could do that too. That is, you can create a new discovery, specify the IP range, run it, and in case you have added new servers or new applications within that IP range and you wish to add them, you can, for this is just an example, and for situations like this, you can reschedule or schedule the discovery to happen so as to add all of those devices that weren't previously in your network. What I'm going to do now is click on this icon, edit, to show you exactly how a discovery screen would look like if you click on add new and try to configure a discovery. So right here, you just have to name your discovery. You can choose one of these options, and these options basically are use all credentials from Credential Manager. And what that means is basically the product allows you to store your important server related credentials within the product safely. So you could click this and add a new credential, or you could simply use a public credential. And then the type, in this case, that would be IP range, and there's some range entered here. And once this is done, all you have to do is click on discover, and this will take us to the screen we saw in our presentation. And before you wonder what this does, this is basically, it gives us the default ports where some default servers or applications in our network are running. You can choose to remove them if from the discovery if you do not want to add them, or you can add other applications based on your knowledge of the ports they are hosted in. Any which way, once you're done, you click on discover and the discovery process is complete, which leads us to the screens we saw in the presentation. I am not going to run this discovery right now because it might take a few minutes, but I hope it is clear how the discovery process basically works. So what I'm going to show you next is an example of the dependency map, in fact. So once the discovery is complete, what I've done in this example, in fact, is let us assume that these were the 5 discovered devices. What I did was I put all 5 of them within a business service group under the name applications manager. And once it is complete, the discovery process, you will be able to do the same. And now what I'm doing is viewing the dependency map for this particular business service group. And here it is. So let me just zoom it a bit. Yes. Try to drag, drop, and rearrange. So you will be able to do all of these changes as well. That is, rearrange them to any which way you see fit. Let me zoom in a little bit. All right, so what we see here is basically a business service group by the name Applications Manager, and 5 different servers, or let's say applications, that are connected to this business service group. And as we saw, these 4 are in green while this one is in red. So this quick look tells us there's a problem with this Windows server. And when I place my mouse cursor over it, it tells me what that problem is. In fact, let us take a look at what the problem is with this business service group, since there's a problem here, which we can probably accurately assume that this problem is what is bringing the health of the business service down. And we can actually ascertain that by looking at the root cause here, which are in fact the same root cause that are bringing this particular Windows server down. So now again, this is a tiny representation with just one business service group and 5 monitors. But if you imagine this at scale with hundreds or several thousands of servers or applications within your IT ecosystem, it starts to offer some real value, because you wouldn't be able to locate a problem with this Windows server so quickly if you were to manually hunt for the problem. Basically, this eases that aspect. And in fact, it also allows you to see a dependency map for different layers, that is, different subgroups within these business service groups. Monitor groups are nothing but business service groups, or show only critical monitors based upon which monitors you deem critical for your business services. So that's about the discovery and dependency mapping. But before I forget, let me quickly show you these 2 options as well. So what does add do? This is by far the most simple way of adding a device, adding a monitor within the applications manager console. And once you click on add, basically what you have to do next is select the type of technology or application you are trying to add within the product, and then enter the credentials and you should be good to go. In this case, I'm just going to click on Windows, and all of this details should be available with you if you have a Windows server. And once you do that, you have to click on add monitors and your Windows server is added. We support WMI as well as SNMP based monitoring for Windows. And the bulk import option would help you do the same thing. Let us assume you have 100 Windows servers, so similar type of servers. All you have to do is click on find this option servers, download this CSV file, enter the details of all of those Windows server or whichever servers they are, enter their details, enter the credentials, and then upload that file. And in a minute, all your server instances are added within the product. So that's just about the first part of today's agenda. Let's take a look at the next part now, which is monitor and troubleshoot your physical and virtual servers. So what do we monitor when it comes to physical and virtual server? And what I've tried to do here is actually try to put the primary parameters that we will have to monitor when it comes to your infrastructure elements. And of course, when I say CPU, memory, or disk, it goes without saying that there are many parameters within these that we have to be wary about, and we'll see that within the product. So the CPU utilization, the memory utilization, and the disk utilization are the most fundamental parameters that we have to monitor for any infrastructure monitoring plan that we might have. The network parameters, in fact, they help solve a really important issue, that is sometimes there are incidents of uh, locating, in fact, where a problem is. Is there a problem with the application code? Is there a problem on the server side, or is there a problem with the network adapter or the network connectivity? So these kind of insights can be found from the network details, and in fact you can eliminate the possibility of network errors once you monitor these parameters. And then services and processes, in fact, not just processes and services, but then scheduled tasks and scripts and things like that. So these are some examples of some important processes that run within Windows Server in this example. So there could be several Windows services or processes that support important business applications. So monitoring these critical processes and services are just as important. And if you choose to add your Windows Server using the WMI mode, you will also be able to collect event logs, which again constitute an important part of your server monitoring strategy. And last but not the least comes the hardware details. And in fact, this is one of the aspects that is most often overlooked because they do not happen frequently, but when they do, they actually cause some significant damage. So there are parameters on the hardware front that you have to monitor in order to stay aware of any potential problems there. Things such as your CPU temperature or your fan speed and things like that, that we'll see a few of them in the next slides. All right, so right here is a quick look, in fact, of what I was just mentioning in the previous slide, that when we say CPU, memory, or disk, or in fact any metric, there are a lot of parameters within this that we have to monitor. And this is just an example of the number of attributes and the types of attributes that you would be able to monitor for a particular server instance. And of course, we will take a better look and a clearer look at this within the product when we move into it. But before I do that, let me quickly show you one slide about the hardware issues. And some issues are listed on your left, the kind of hardware issues that could arise and could actually pose a threat to performance, that is extreme temperatures or problems with your power supply or even your cooling fan not working properly. On your right are some more parameters that you could monitor, and basically it takes nothing to keep an eye on these hardware problems, but then overlooking them can cause some problems in the long run. Moving to the product again, we're back to the monitors screen. So what we'll do now is look at some of the parameters that we collect for a server instance. So once again, I'm moving my cursor to the title servers, and there are all of these are the different kinds of servers that are that can be monitored. Right below is a list of the different kinds of virtual machines that the product supports and you can monitor. So I'm going to click on this instance, I mean this Windows text, and when I click that, I see that there are 6 instances of Windows Server within my Applications Manager console. I'm going to click one of them, and we're going to walk through some of the details in these tabs here. So the very first one is the overview. Basically, this is a summary screen that gives me all the information I want to know about this particular Windows instance. And in fact, if you notice, this is the same Windows instance that we saw in the dependency map. If you see it, the reasons are the same. So basically, I know now that this Windows server is available, but it is not healthy, and the problem is right here. These are the problems. Let me ignore that and scroll below so I can show you basically the kind of parameters that we collect: the CPU, memory, and disk. A little bit of details, more details, in fact, about the page reads and writes per second, the breakup of CPU utilization. And if you'll notice, there are icons like this, and I'll explain to you in the next item on our agenda. Basically, this leads us to fault management. On basically what the point I'm trying to make here is all of these individual parameters can be associated with thresholds and can be configured for alarms should they breach a specific threshold value. Right here are the process and service details. Let me just quickly scroll to the top and walk you through these options here. So processes, services, you can add scheduled tasks, you can associate scripts, and you can even associate URLs to this instance of Windows Server. Let us take a look at the depth of details collected for CPU. This is a summary of the CPU utilization, but if we scroll down, we see the CPU utilization by cores. And right here is the same detail listed, shown in listed format. Again, all of these can be associated with thresholds and associated with actions if you would want to automate actions. Of course, we'll see that in the very next item when we go to the presentation and come back. So here's some detail about the disk, the C, D, E, the different space on different drives of your Windows instance. And in fact, this is a really cool example because what we notice here is that 13% of drive C is free while 88 of E is free. So this probably tells us that we need not overload the C drive with any more components or any more applications. In fact, we should probably try to reallocate some of the resources from this drive to something else. So that is the kind of detail that you can probably derive from these tabs. Let me quickly show you these graphs here for the disk IO statistics. I click on the network tab, and this tells me about the network interface, adapter, and in fact details about the firewall as well. So you can rule out problems on the network front if you see these parameters and they seem to be optimal values. So what I'm going to do is go back to monitors and show you some details with respect to virtual machines as well, because we've been looking at details for physical servers so far. Just quickly look at the one example of virtual server. Maybe I'll take the Hyper-V server, 2 instances. Let me just take this one. So yeah, in this, again, in the overview screen, we see what's the availability, what's the health, and what's the reason for the health not being proper. The overview will tell us the hypervisor details, that is the CPU and memory details, and the services. In fact, we were talking about the same in physical servers and the individual instances of VMs. But let us take a look at the CPU and memory details here as well. The CPU cores, the memory details, page details, and some more details with respect to storage. So here are some storage details and the virtual storage details, and finally the virtual network adapter details as well. So you see the kind of information, in fact, the depth of information that you can find with the infrastructure monitoring functionality of the product. And this is only the infrastructure monitoring functionality that we are talking about, that is the servers and virtualization, uh, which applies to server and virtualization modules. But then again, the capabilities extend to other different types of applications as well. Let me quickly click here and show you the hardware parameters before I forget. And yeah, this is just an example of the kind of hardware details you will be able to see and monitor. All right, so back to the presentation and onwards to the third part of the agenda, and that is configuring AI-based fault management functions. Of course, it goes without saying that you need to have an intelligent alerting system that aids your troubleshooting process. And that is exactly what this fault management feature within the product is designed to do. It facilitates the traditional threshold profiling, wherein you specify a range with different severity levels for your thresholds. And alternatively, the product also has the ability to use machine learning to automatically reconfigure the threshold values for different performance parameters. So you have the option to manually use your own set of thresholds, or you can use machine learning and enable the product to use its own threshold settings. The same applies to anomaly profiles. We have static and dynamic baseline values. Static will allow you to set your own dynamic own baselines, while dynamic baselines will allow you to use previous best performance values and compare against those and consistently uh, reconfigure your baseline values. So this is to detect anomalies that could creep up on the performance side of your infrastructure components over the course of time. And of course, it wouldn't suffice if we were to only associate thresholds. We have to link them to actions, and these actions could be anything from a simple notification action, such as an email or an SMS or a trap or a Slack notification, or it could be a troubleshooting action, such as generating a heap dump or thread dump of a Java application, starting or stopping a virtual machine, or probably executing a script. So these are some of the actions you can automate. For example, if you want to run, if you see the disk space error and you want to run a disk cleanup, you can perhaps write a script for that and automate that script using the actions right here. So basically what will happen is you will be able to execute that script every time the product detects a disk space error, thereby eliminating the need for you to manually do that. And so yeah, these actions that you see here, these are the list of actions that you will be able to perform with the product that will help you probably fasten your troubleshooting process. Back to the product so I can show you how all of this works. So let me first show you the most simplistic way of associating or configuring alarms. So right here, I am within the same Windows instance. And when I move to my right, what I see here is this option, right? Configure alarms. Now, of course, I can click on individual attribute like this and go to the same screen, or I could simply go here and look at all the attributes at once and click on this option to associate a threshold. So let's begin with this one. I'll simply click on this and it will open up this pop-up screen for me where I can choose to associate the kind of threshold I want with that particular parameter. Now remember, what we are doing here is we are associating a threshold for one particular parameter within this Windows Server instance. And I can either choose from an existing threshold or I can click here for a new threshold profile, configure the threshold profile, and that is it. I would be done. Or I can simply click on machine learning and leave it at that. If I click this, I will be able to perform actions, but we will first see how to configure those actions before we talk about those actions. So this is just for one particular instance of a particular parameter of this instance. However, if I click here and you see view threshold profile, this is basically a list of threshold profiles that my console already has. So we can add a new threshold profile that you can simply call and use for different Windows Server instances, or simply go here to this option, configure alarms, and then use a template across different application types. So right here is monitors. What this does is if I select Windows 10, so this is the instance we were talking about. So this setting that I do here will get applied to this instance. If I click on monitor group, what this does is all the servers or applications within this business service group will get will have the same threshold configurations. This is the option that will serve as the template. That is, this template can be applied to any of the different Windows instances within the business service group, that is. And the final option basically will allow you to apply threshold configurations to similar kinds of applications throughout your instance. So what this does is every single instance of Windows 10 server within your console, irrespective of the business service groups they are in, will have these changes applied. So that's about thresholds. However, let's take a look at how actions work. And this option is what was visible even when we saw from within the instance. So this is what the action tab actually does. When I click this, it will open up this and it will allow me to configure action. So these thresholds affect the health, and when the health is affected, what is the action that I want to automate? Is it a mail action? If I choose mail action, it will send an automated mail that I have configured. If I select an SMS action, it will probably send an SMS for different criticality levels. But let us quickly take a look here. So when I click on view actions, these are all the pre-existing actions that I have already created. And these are the ones that were showing up in that previous box. So the actions are here, which monitor they are associated with, what kind of action it is, how many different instances of different applications are using a particular action. This is basically the repository to see all of your actions. And this right here is your repository to see all of your alarms. So I guess that kind of makes it a bit clearer. So what do we do is click on configure alarms, choose the kind of threshold settings that we want to apply. Is it for a particular instance type across the console of applications manager? Is it for a particular business service group, or is it just for a particular single instance of a particular server? And we saw that beyond this, the thresholds can be applied to basically we saw the level of details, that these can be added, these thresholds can be configured to individual performance metrics such as these. So we basically know that without all of this, there will be a lot of gaps that we would be missing. And basically this makes sure that the infrastructure monitoring plan or strategy is basically a comprehensive one that collects the most minute details as well as gives us a quick summarized overview and the dependency mapping and all of that. So having said that, what I'm going to do now is go back to product and show you, yeah, the root cause analysis. So I guess we have spoken about this when we saw the different slides. So let me just quickly show that once again to you. So we did notice here in this example, right? So there is a problem with the health and we actually see what the root cause is. So this is exactly, this in fact saves a ton of time, because if we knew that the health is down, we wouldn't be able to deduce much with that information, because we would have to actually have some operations expert or an admin look down as to why the problem is, or check through the services or check through the processes and find out why the problem has occurred. And what I just did, if you noticed, was I clicked on the alarm history so I can expand on the root cause analysis that I received. And this is what I see here with the timestamp as to what has happened, when it happened, and what is the severity level. So different problems, it had 4 problems as you see here. And then by the time it was 11:23, I guess one of the problems was resolved, and there are 3 problems right here. So complete history of the root cause analysis. So as a user, you can probably understand the amount of insights that we have spoken about just in the first 3 parts of this first session of Applications Manager. So I'll move to the last and final part of today's webinar, which would be utilize analytics powered by machine learning. And this is primarily 2 main areas that we have to absolutely prioritize, which is capacity planning and forecast reports. Basically, both of these, they go hand in hand, and each complements the other with the kind of insights they collect. The capacity planning, however, would be restricted to obviously servers and infrastructure components like virtual machines, but then the forecast reports extend beyond infrastructure to other applications as well, and it can basically forecast application performance, growth, and utilization trends. So a quick look at how they would look within the product before we actually move to the product and see them. So this here is the capacity planning report, and this is how it looks. The instances on the left, and what's the problem? Are they oversized? I mean, basically overutilized, or are they underutilized or undersized? And what are the reasons? So we use CPU memory and disk utilization parameters to basically show the capacity statistics for a particular server instance. Let me show you the next one, which would be the forecast report. And this one here, it uses historical performance data and uses machine learning to perform predictive analysis of the growth and utilization trends of your servers, as well as different performance attributes across applications. So we look at these in the product, but before we do that, just a quick small reporting feature that we introduced is the audit logs. And as the name suggests, it just keeps a record of anything and everything that happens within the console. So as an applications manager admin, you might want to stay aware of all the changes being made on different servers or business service groups or applications, and the people making those changes, and why they make those changes. So this basically is an audit report of everything that happens within the product. To the presentation and to the reports tab right here, I'm clicking on the reports tab. And once you click this, you'll probably be amazed at the number of reports that we are able to offer within the product by default. And right from trend analysis report to attribute wise report for different types of monitors or applications that we support. Right here you can see for individual servers based on different attributes for application servers and so on. But then our focus is the capacity planning report. I click on that, and let us take for this example just this one. Let's take a look at how many servers are in fact undersized, and this is for all of the server instances I have within my applications manager console. And right here you can see there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 instances, and most of them seem to be fine. However, there's a problem with the first two Windows instances. They are both undersized. However, they both have different reasons for being labeled undersized. This one says the disk utilization has exceeded the threshold, while this one says that the memory utilization has exceeded the threshold. And these thresholds are basically what you configure right here. And based on that, this capacity planning report is populated. And so basically, obviously you can add your notes here that might help in your decision making, but then overall this kind of insight should give you enough evidence as to what you need to do further. And in this case I would probably I think the insight that we can probably deduce is there is enough server capacity, or the memory utilization can be ideal. However, only if we move it to some other servers, which seems like most of them barely have any utilization at all. So they are basically idle, and you can probably use them and use your capacity, maximize the use of your capacity optimally. So that is perhaps something we can see here. But then, of course, as IT admins, you will be better aware of your native ecosystem and how it would perform best. So I'm going to click on the forecast report next. So we can just take a look at some forecast details. I'm going to check for servers because obviously we're talking about servers in today's session. And if I click on servers, it basically gives me the performance parameters for different server types within the product. This is for AIX. Let me type Windows. So I'm down here to the Windows section. Let us just take a look at the disk space free percentage. All right, so this is a graph which is a 1 month forecast. Right here is the forecast by growth trend, and this one's the forecast by utilization. We take a 10-month predictive analysis, and we see a slight difference, in fact. And right here is the tabular representation of the same data. And in fact, what this tells us is, well, right now, in fact, we are quite safe. Why? Because the usage is not significant or not growing at a significant pace. But then again, when it approaches closer to this zone here, that is the 80% mark, it is perhaps it would be wise to monitor the development, that is the utilization growth, and be proactive when it comes to taking suitable actions before they actually move into the danger zone and probably start posing problems. So that's about the machine learning based forecast reports. And the audit reports, of course, you click on the admin tab and you will find it right here, the audit logs. And if I click on this, you will find the same detail that we found on the presentation screen. So I guess that what that does is bring us to the end of the webinar. However, let me take a few minutes to quickly summarize the things that we discussed today. The first one was how to automate application discovery and dependency mapping using the different methodologies of application discovery, and then how the dependency mapping actually eases a lot of our work on the monitoring front. We kind of saw the different parameters, the critical parameters when it comes to infrastructure elements, and we saw various parameters that we will be able to monitor within these infrastructure elements. We saw threshold profiling. We saw how actions work and the different kind of actions within the product that support not just notification sending but also in troubleshooting certain issues. Finally, we took some moment to walk through the capacity planning and forecast reports within applications manager and tried to just see how these insights can be valuable to somebody working on a server or virtual server or application performance monitoring. I hope it was a good learning experience for the attendees that took part today. And below are the two links that could be useful to you. The first is the demo.appmanager.com link, and that is the link that I was using today during the course of this webinar. Everything I showed, you can see it there, and you can see more features and explore more functionalities of the product through that link. Or better yet, you can simply drop us an email at eval-apm@manageengine.com and kickstart a conversation with our experts, or perhaps schedule your own personalized demo with our experts. So we will share all of the resources with you in a day or two's time. I hope everybody is safe, and I pray that the pandemic is over soon and the world resumes back to normal. Stay safe, everybody, and have a fantastic day ahead. Thank you.